So what was important to you when you were growing up?
I think when you're growing up, you don't analyse that kind of stuff, so you're not really, you're not really thinking about it. But music was always a part of my life.
Did you have a first musical memory?
Yeah, I do actually, because I thought about that when with this question, and I'm one of these people who actually, I don't remember a lot about my early childhood, and I don't know why that is, but I don't. But anyway, but I do have a quite strong, very early musical memories of, there used to be a program in England where I grew up, a radio program called Listen with Mother, and it was on in sort of early afternoon, for preschoolers sort of program, and particularly my memories of a winter days when we would have an open fire going, and Mum and I would sit down. I'd sit on her lap on a comfortable chair, and we'd listen to this program, Listen with Mother, and it had music and stories and things like that. So that's a really early memory. Yeah.
I also remember that from growing up in England.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Listen with Mother was very important. Yeah. And then there was lots of music in my family. My parents they didn't play music or stuff, but my mother loved music, and she always had the radio on, or we had a stereogram, and she would play things like My Fair Lady and Salad Days and all these, musical soundtrack kind of stuff. She loved that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I had two older brothers who were both very much into music, still are. So I had all their influences, which ranged from, I was listening to Bob Dylan when I was quite young, before, he was sort of popular kind of thing in England, because my eldest brother, who's nearly 10 years older than me, was really, really into music, and he was in a band, and the band used to rehearse at our house, and when I was 11, there was a rock band sort of, rehearsing in the house.
I want to do that.
Yeah. And Chris was into a lot of American music, actually. He listened to Dylan, but he was also very much into, like Woody Guthrie and Ramley Jack Elliott and because early rock and roll, Gene Vincent and all that kind of stuff. But also, blues Robert Johnson, and so the whole kind of all of that sort of thing. Not only was he listening to it, but he was also playing it, because he had a Gibson guitar, and he'd sit there and practice his flat picking, so Earl Scruggs and all of that. All that kind of stuff. Then my other brother was more into the English kind of new folk music, so Pentangle and Bert Jansch and John Renbourn and Davy Graham, all of that kind of folk blues, and the Fairport Convention, and
Now, this question is about the personal content of your music. How hard is it sometimes to put out a really, really personal song and sing it in public?
I actually don't find it too hard, and I don't know why that is, because I'm quite a private person really, but there's something about the music, doing it through music, that makes you able to do it. But I think it does make you very vulnerable. I mean, you can feel very vulnerable, and some of my songs are very personal and vulnerable, but I think that you have to be very careful, I think there's a really fine line between putting across something that is a sort of a universal, or an experience that lots of people have and can relate to, or kind of exposing the agony of your soul in a way that embarrasses the audience, and I've seen people do that. And I hopefully have learnt from seeing people do that, and it not being a good thing to do. But for me, there's something really special about being able to sing a song that is intensely personal, and yet to see it register in people's faces that, wow, yes, I've been there, you know, I've felt that. Or it's a very special, it's an honour really to be able to do that, I think.
Could you just come up with some song titles of the ones that are like that?
We're a million miles. Women.
That is exactly
just,
the song I was going to say.
Women, yeah.
That is an amazing song. Really is.
One woman who is also a songwriter, actually, we were actually playing at a songwriters gathering in the Waitakere. This is years ago now. And people got up and did a few songs, and then people talked about the songs, you know. And she came up to me afterwards, and she wanted to say to me, "What was that song about? Was it about abortion?" You know, she was just so kind of, you know, because she'd had that experience and she knew what I was singing about, and it just kind of, it was so intense, you know. And I mean, I don't sing that song very often. We actually did it at the final concert at the Auckland Folk Festival when we did the guest spot there, and I think it, you know, it went really well. But it's not a song that I could do very often.
It is very powerful
because it's you know, you've got to pick your moments with a song like that.
Yes. Do you think living in New Zealand affects your writing, or could you be anywhere on the planet?
Well, I mean, I think wherever you are is going to affect your writing. You know, I mean, yeah, living in New Zealand affects my writing, but then if I lived in London, that would affect my writing, or if I was in New York, that would affect my writing, you know. Unless you're completely kind of closed off from the world, how could it not?
Yeah. So maybe the next question there is, how does it affect your writing? What is it about New Zealand that you would want to portray? Like you've got that song South, where you're looking out the back of the car, the rearview mirror, and the roads just going on behind you, and you're travelling through the South Island, which is an amazing place to be. That's the kind of identifying with the countryside or the feel of the place. But are there any other specific ways that New Zealand has come up in the imagery in your words and writing?
Yeah, it has. I mean, there's the storm, which is about Wellington, you know, and it's got the imagery of the, you know, the ferry on the harbour, and the rain being so hard you can't see the hills on the other side of the harbour. One Tree, which is a song about the tree that no longer is on One Tree Hill in Auckland. So those things kind of creep in, you know, not all the time, but I think your environment affects you in ways that are so subtle that it's kind of hard to actually pinpoint. You know, there are times when you actually mention places or, you know, things or whatever, but there's an atmosphere in a place that changes the way you perceive things in a way that's a bit hard to pin down, I think. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to look at your paper about at this stage that you might not have said that you want to?
Yeah, well, I've just said, you know, about when I lived in Australia. I think my writing was quite different when I lived in Australia, because Australia is such a different place to New Zealand. It's just so much brasher and harsher and stark contrasts and stuff like that. And I think the music has an edge to it. I think Australian music has an edge to it, whereas a lot of New Zealand music is kind of softened around the edges, you know, and that's the environment kind of working on you, on your psyche and your soul in a way that, you know, that you don't actually analyse really.